Good morning and welcome to the Substack. It's the MikeGrahamShow.com, and this is the bonus show that we do every single day after we've finished the breakfast show, which goes from 7 until 9, of course. And what we've been doing this week is talking to a series of very influential and interesting people about their specialist subjects. We spoke to Will Geddes about the security business and about how to avoid getting your phone hacked. We spoke to Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union about the attacks that are being made on people's free speech by this government and by the police. We also spoke to Andrew Montford from Net Zero, who is Net Zero Watch, I should say, who's keeping an eye very much on Ed Miliband and what he's up to, trying to get us all to go green. But today we're going to do something slightly different, because this is something I've wanted to do for a while. And by coincidence, I was contacted by a woman by the name of Rachael Ellis, a mother, a daughter, a family woman who has had a terrible time at the hands of the NHS over the past several weeks and months, because her mother has been in hospital after suffering a stroke. And so what I wanted to do when Rachael contacted me was to say, why don't we tell your story? Because we talk about the NHS an awful lot on this show, and I talk about it an awful lot because I know, for example, how important health is to everybody in this world. You know, it's only when your health turns bad that you realise that nothing else really matters. And when you have elderly parents, it's a worry. When you have sick children, it's a worry. When you yourself sometimes don't feel so good and you can't get to work and you can't get the horrible bug out of your head, you know, it's a terrible time for everybody. But Rachel's story is one which I think typical, but certainly is not that unusual either, because so many of you, whenever I ask you for your experiences with the NHS, tell me some real horror stories. But let me introduce you now to Rachael Ellis. She's the daughter of Mrs. Anne Ellis. Rachael, a very good morning to you and welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Hi.
They had a stroke
Yeah,
sometime towards the end of October, right?
yeah, she did. Well, she wasn't very well for a month or so before. And I mean, a lot of it is down to the lack of services in the GP surgery as well, to be fair, because she'd had a couple of falls as well. She'd been she couldn't see a GP. It was just a prescribing pharmacist and the nurse that saw her. And they didn't take into account the fact that she had a big heart attack in 2011. She had 4 stents fitted, and she'd had a few falls. So it stemmed from there. But on the 31st of October, her symptoms were so bad. She was she couldn't sit up by herself. She couldn't walk. She was slurring her words. She had she was being sick, constantly being sick. She was delusional as well, and we took her to A&E, and they just left her in the urgent care, the urgent treatment room. I think she was in there for about 12 hours or something. And I told the consultant that the parallels, because I've got multiple sclerosis, so I knew those symptoms were more neurological rather than
Right.
anything. And I did ask them to do a MRI scan, but it wasn't. They didn't really listen. And then I told them that she needs to be laid down as well, but they said there's nowhere for her to lie down. I had to ask them to give her some anti-sickness and IV fluids while she was waiting. That wasn't proactively done at all. And they finally saw her, and she had a CT scan. Now, where she's had the stroke is in the cerebellum, which is at the back of the brain, and it is really quite difficult to see sometimes on a CT scan. But yeah, they did the CT scan and it was clear. And they sent her home with a diagnosis of labyrinthitis. So they thought it was
They didn't think she'd had a stroke at that point.
No,
Right.
No,
And
even though she had all the classic
how
signs.
old is your mother, Rachel?
She's 78.
Okay, so she's not that old. There's a
Yeah,
picture of her there. Um,
yeah.
and you sound as though you know a thing or two about medicine and matters to do with health. Is that because you're trained in that way, or is it just because you've experienced looking after your mother for so long?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 21 with my MS, so I've had a lot of experience with neurological issues. I'm
Right.
not trained, but I'm good at doing research. Um, so yeah, no, I'm not a trained
Okay.
medical professional at all.
Right. So we're
So
talking about the Northern Care Alliance here, aren't we? The NHS Foundation Trust of the Northern Care Alliance, and I
yeah,
believe the hospital involved is in Oldham. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah. So they send her home after she's been in the A&E for what sounds like about 12 hours or so, right?
yeah,
Not
yeah,
lying, so not lying down, sitting in a chair,
yeah, in a wheelchair.
right? And so she gets sent home. They say that she hasn't had a stroke or they haven't detected that. What happens next?
Well, she was left at home then on the Saturday. Obviously, her symptoms weren't improving at all. And then Sunday morning, she gave me a call about 9 o'clock, and she was like, I really don't feel well at all. I feel like I'm going worse. And I phoned an ambulance then at 9:13 a.m. and went straight up to see her. She was in bed, like I said, she was really delusional, talking gobbledygook. And then constantly being sick, she couldn't move. My dad had to move her. If she needed to go to the toilet, he had to pick her, get her out of bed, take her to the bathroom, which was really, really hard for him because he's 82, almost 83, and he's got his own health issues as well. So I went down and, I mean, they actually put her in an ambulance, and they live on a main road, and the ambulance was there waiting to go to the hospital, and then a blooming car crashed into the back of the ambulance. You can't even make this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went back, and now I don't know what that handover was like
Mm.
between, because they had to call another ambulance, so I don't know what the handover was like between the two lots of paramedics. But when she went to Oldham then, she'd missed the triage bit because she'd already been triaged at home,
Right.
but they still sent her straight through to the urgent care centre. There was, even though she'd arrived by ambulance, she was put kind of to the back of the queue again then, and she had another 10-12 hour stint in A&E then with worsening symptoms. No CT scan. But the CT scan wasn't repeated on the Sunday, the 2nd of November. And then
Do
they
they?
admitted her to a ward. Sorry.
I was going to say, what do they say if she's sitting there in a wheelchair? I
Yeah.
mean, can you ever get any sense out of any nurses or doctors? Does anybody come and ask if she's okay? Does she just get left alone? What
No.
happens?
She was just left. Yeah,
Mm.
she was just left. And when I was there, I was obviously going mithering the nurses and the doctors. And I kept saying, she needs some fluids because she's not able to keep anything down at
Right.
all. She's trying to eat and drink, but it's just coming straight back up.
Mm.
And yeah, she needed some anti-sickness, some IV, and I did again say about the parallels between my mum's symptoms and mine. And I did say that she needs an MRI scan, ideally, to find
Mm.
out what's going on. But obviously, it was all ignored again. They don't. It's like they don't like listening to the families, or they know best, or they're too busy
Mm.
because it
Yeah.
was busy. The consultant had actually come out on the first night and said there's I think it was a 7 hour wait to see a doctor from that point, plus people going in via emergency ambulance. So if anybody has anything that they think that could be treated by a GP on Monday morning, to go home. And there weren't that many that went, to be honest. There were people. You don't know what's wrong with people. You can't just say, "Oh, there was nothing wrong with them." But you you just don't know. It was
It's so
honestly, that
frustrating,
room
isn't
was
it? Because
packed. Yeah,
yeah, it must be horrible. And you're, of course, you're worried about your mother anyway and her
yeah.
well-being. And so what happened when they finally did see her that time?
So they admitted her to a ward called the Frailty Ward. I think it's like a little side ward off A&E. They admitted her into that for a few hours, and then they sent her home then with the same wrong diagnosis. And they discharged her onto a virtual ward, which I'd not really heard about before this.
Mm,
So that is a team of people. So it's for people who would normally be in hospital, but they're treating them at home rather than in the hospital. So she was sent home, and like I said, my dad was basically caring for her, which is another breach as well, because he should have had a proper carers assessment done.
right.
So the physio went round and said that my mum couldn't go downstairs at all. She wasn't fit enough to do that. They brought her a commode, a walking frame,
Mm,
and then the physio actually took my mum's pulse and said that she's got AF, arterial fibrillation, which is where your heart,
mm,
the top part of your heart doesn't pump properly all the
right.
time, which is what had caused the stroke. So,
So they still
but
haven't diagnosed. So they still haven't diagnosed a stroke at this point.
no, they hadn't. So they said he was more pleased with himself that he'd actually found that she had this AF, but that should have been treated straight away then.
Mm,
But it wasn't. It was just left. I spoke to the virtual ward on several occasions that week with my concerns, and on one of the days they actually said to phone an ambulance and to take her back into A&E, but there was no expedited route for her, even though she was on a virtual ward. So they expected my mum to go back into hospital and have another 10, 12-hour stint
yeah.
in A&E, and she just couldn't do it. She couldn't do it.
Mm,
So she was left at home. There was no escalation through the virtual ward. She was just left there for a week. And
right.
then they finally admitted on the Monday after, which I think would be the 10th, I'm not sure,
Right.
that she wasn't improving and there was nothing more that they could do on the virtual ward and to call an ambulance, which
Right.
I did. She said then that there was no expedited route through A&E again. So she was expected to go in and wait. But luckily the call handler at 999, she kind of recognised the urgency of it, and she did manage to get my mum straight into back into A&E without having to wait.
Okay. But she's still not
Yeah.
been admitted to hospital at this point, and we're now what, two weeks later.
Yeah, wait a week, about 10 days, I think
So
it
when
is.
did they
Yeah,
finally?
about 10 days.
When did they finally admit her into the hospital?
So on the day, so it would have been the 10th on the Monday, they took her in and they repeated the CT scan, and it took a junior doctor about 3 minutes to diagnose the stroke.
Right.
And that was when she was admitted into Oldham. So she was on the adult, the acute medical unit for a
Yes.
night or so. And because she had, they tested her for flu, and they said that she tested positive for flu, and she had to be kept isolated. And there was a room on CCU, which is the cardiac ward. So
Yeah.
she was put in there for over a week with no help, no physio, no specialised training for anybody. She was just basically just left. And they said that they couldn't send her down to the specialist stroke unit because they had no side rooms, and because my mum had tested positive for flu,
Right.
that she had to be in a side room. But when she did eventually get admitted to the stroke ward at Fairfield Hospital, ironically, they put her in a side room that they said that didn't exist.
Right. Goodness me. So you
So
must have been at the end of your tether. I mean, I don't know if you work, Matt, as well, Rachel. So,
no,
it must be awful just to be worried about your mother,
yeah,
wondering who's looking after her, wondering whether she's being neglected while she's inside.
yeah,
You've now written a formal complaint letter because of what happened next. Because in addition to all of that terrible, missing diagnoses and not recognizing the stroke, you know, let's move forward, say, for example, into kind of, the Christmas period, because that's, I know, when you were particularly concerned about the way she was being treated, Tell us about
yeah.
what happened over Christmas.
Well, so she'd been put onto the ward now, and she still had she's still got it in up to now a catheter,
Yeah.
and she and so they did a swab and they found that she had E. coli, but this was after a swab had been done. The results had come back
Yeah.
positive for E. coli, but they were missed. Nobody saw those results. So it was my sister actually who noticed that she had blood in her urine in the
Mm.
bag, and the nurse came and did another swab. And when she was entering that into the system, she noticed then that the last swab had come back and it had been missed.
Right.
So my mum was started on antibiotics then, which made her even worse. I mean, when you see your mum like that, and through all this time, all she kept saying was, "It'd be better if I was dead."
Wow.
She literally she wanted to die, which is
Mm.
so difficult for me to say. You know, seeing her like that, and my dad was so worried as well. So she had this E. coli, which was treated with oral antibiotics. She's got it again, actually. She's got the E. coli again, and then there was no physio or anything being done, which is not their fault in particular. But my mum was too poorly because they'd missed all that crucial time
Right.
that you need, at the start of the stroke. They'd completely missed all that. So she went in, and then over Christmas, it was like a ghost town
Right.
in that hospital. I couldn't believe it.
Well, so nobody really working very much. And this is now what, 6 weeks she's been in a hospital.
Yeah.
You also told me that the service wasn't great, that nurses would
Nope.
shout at her if she wanted to
Oh yeah,
press
she
the
got
buzzer.
shouted at.
I mean, that's
Yeah, she pressed the
unbelievable.
buzzer. Yeah, she pressed the buzzer because she needs either two people with her, or now she's able to walk with a frame. She needs the frame and one other person. But she pressed the buzzer and they were serving out the lunches, I think it was. And the HCA came in and just said, "Oh, you need the toilet. Well, are you all right to just hang on whilst we do the lunches?" And my mum
Mm.
said, "Yeah, that's fine." But because she's in the end bed, so there's like a little window at the side where she can see the corridor, and she'd seen people
Mm.
walking back and thought that they'd finished. So she pressed a buzzer again, and then the senior nurse came in and had a right pop at my mum and said, "Can't you see we're busy? We've got lunches to do." My mum was like, "Well, that's not my fault,
Right.
you know." And can
Right.
you imagine feeling that vulnerable and
No, it's awful.
humiliated as well?
Yeah,
She
it's
just wanted to
awful.
go to the toilet.
So,
Yeah.
so what's the situation now, Rachel?
So now, obviously, she's still not home. And when she does come home, she's probably going to have downstairs living.
Mm.
But there's no bathroom downstairs at all. So she's going to have a commode downstairs. We'll have to bring the bed down so that her
Mm.
and my father can both sleep downstairs. She will have carers coming in for the time that they get a few weeks, where the council kind of pay for the carers to come in. So she'll have that for a little bit, but she still can't walk by herself, and she can't always walk with a walker either. It
Mm.
depends on how she is that day. Um, and then yeah, I think we're just waiting on Oldham Council now to get
Yeah.
the correct carers in. and
Right.
then find out what's going to happen. But she won't be able to have a shower because the shower's too small for a shower seat. So she's going to have a body wash every other day or whatever.
Yeah.
So she won't be able to wash her hair properly either. It's just humiliating for
Yes.
her
And the
because
trouble is, it's
even
not been
though,
made any easier by the NHS. And I mean, your letter, which is very thorough, is asking for an investigation, asking for why so many things went wrong, so many things were missed, so many
yeah,
infections were not spotted.
yeah, yeah,
And basically, the management of her time in hospital was pretty negligent, it seems to me.
it really was, really was.
Yeah.
Just the fact that they didn't repeat that CT scan on the Sunday as
Yeah.
well, when she went in with worsening symptoms than what she had on the Friday,
Right.
and
And has
and they
anybody
just
from the
fobbed her
hospital,
off.
has anyone from the hospital ever kind of spoken to you about how sorry they are that she hasn't been treated well or that she's been treated this badly?
Oh, well, you get that, don't you, from the doctors? They just try and gaslight all the time.
Mm,
It's like, oh, it's not our fault. We had to do this and we had to do that. We've had no apology really from
right.
anybody, and there doesn't seem to be that much continuity in care either, to be honest.
Mm,
Um, with the staff on the ward, there's different nurses on there all the time,
right.
or because there's a few different wards on that ward. They might be in
Mm,
a different ward, and I just think that it would be a lot better as well if it was run where there was more continuity and they had a group of staff that were just particularly on that ward,
yeah. I mean, do you
rather
get
than
the
moving them
sense?
about to different.
Do you get the sense that there's just not really anybody in charge?
Yeah, there's the staff there do the best. I can't fault really what's happened apart from a couple of members of staff, but I can't really fault what's happened so far on the stroke unit, and they have really tried their best with her.
Mm,
Um, but it's all these little things, Now we've got the nice guidelines. Now, yeah, they are guidelines. They don't have to be,
mm,
I suppose, adhered to 100%, and guidelines don't always fit every single person. But the guidelines are unambiguous, really, when it comes to stroke treatment and
mm,
diagnosis and the early interventions, and even dignity, and everything.
mm,
They are unambiguous. They are there
yeah.
to, and nothing was done. I mean, just the fact that when she was in Oldham, they were bringing lunches and dinners around for her, and they were basically just going into the room and shoving it on a tray. Bearing in mind, my mum, she couldn't even sit up by
Mm,
herself, and then walking out and leaving her.
yeah.
And then my dad was having to do that. My dad was in there having to sit her up and move. And now my dad's got AF as well.
Right.
Um, he's got arthritis. He does his best. He's a doer, my dad. He'll never give in. But it's just, I mean, he's got to go for an operation sometime this year on his heart.
Mm.
I don't know what's
I
going to
mean,
happen with my
it
mum
all
then.
just paints a terrible picture because, when we see Wes Streeting or Keir Starmer talking about how, they're improving the NHS, they're getting 5 million more appointments out there, they're getting more, upgrades to
Yeah,
artificial intelligence,
they're
and they're
not.
opening up new diagnostic centres all over the place. I mean, when you see them saying those things, what does it make you feel?
Oh, I just feel so angry with him. It's like, but they're deluded. They're deluded. Why do they think that intelligent people, would believe what they're saying? The NHS is in dire. I would scrap the NHS tomorrow. To
Mm,
be fair, at the
yeah,
moment, the way that it is, there's too many. There's too many chiefs, and the Indians are working flat out for not enough money.
yeah,
Like the people that really matter. Not the. I mean, when the junior doctors were on strike, I didn't even notice a difference, to be honest, on that ward.
yeah. I know, incredible. We've
Yeah.
actually got an extract from your letter because it's quite a long letter. We just wanted to give a flavour of it to the people watching because it's a
Okay.
fascinating and sad story. But here's our producers having read the letter out. Have a listen.
Dear Sir or Madam, regarding formal complaint for gross clinical negligence and multiple breaches of duty of care for patient Mrs. Anne Ellis, I am writing to lodge a formal complaint regarding the repeated and life-threatening failures in the care provided to my mother, Mrs. Anne Ellis, across services at the Royal Oldham Hospital, A&E, CCU, and Fairfield General Hospital Stroke Unit, as well as the virtual ward and urgent care teams. These failures spanned from 31st of October 2025 onwards and directly contributed to a preventable posterior circulation stroke, weeks of extreme suffering and likely permanent disability. My mother has consented to be acted on her behalf in this complaint and any related matters, including access to her medical records. I hold the Trust fully responsible for the harm caused and intend to pursue a clinical negligence claim for financial compensation in parallel with this complaint.
Shocking that you have to do that, but I think you're doing the right thing, Rachel, and I'd really take my hat off
Yeah.
to you and admire you for just even going through what you've been through because it must be dreadful. So
It is.
hopefully you're going to send that letter off. We'd like you to keep in touch with us as well, if you can,
Yeah.
to let us
I
know
will
how
do.
it
Yeah.
goes, because sometimes you get, you know, the powers that be just kind of try and brush it all away and brush it all off and try to just ignore it. But we're not going to let that happen. We're going to keep on top of it. Have you got a local MP that you can get involved as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't look very hopeful. Who is it?
Jim, Jim McMahon.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well,
Mm.
he's not going to be very
Yes.
keen on having to go at the NHS, is he? But it's a terrible
No.
story, and I know that the reaction to this will be amazing because so many people will recognise this kind of way that people get treated in the NHS, and it's and it may well be that it's not the fault of
Yeah.
any individuals, but it's a shocking state of affairs. And Rachel, I just want to thank you
Yeah.
for being able to share the story because I can see it's quite upsetting, obviously, isn't it?
It is. And do you know what? This should not happen to anybody. And care in the NHS shouldn't come down to potluck either. It should be consistent. It should, everybody is deserving of that, especially my parents who've worked. My
Yeah.
dad been working since he was, I don't know, 12 or something,
Right.
and my mum, and when it comes to it, they deserve that.
Yeah.
They deserve that treatment. Now, if the NHS isn't going to provide that, then what is the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the
Absolutely right.
point?
Absolutely right. Now, it's an amazing story. We're going to keep on top of it, and we'll try and help you get what it is you need to get with everything that we can
Thank
do.
you.
And please do, let us know anything that happens, and feel free to be in touch whenever you want to be. And before I let you
Yeah.
go, I want a big shout out to your daughter because you sent me a lovely video of her because apparently she's a big fan of the show, right? Tell me about her.
She's a big fan of you.
Right.
So since you were back on breakfast in the mornings, I have it on in the morning, and like she knows you. She always laughs, and when you're on plank of the week
Yeah.
and the old plank of the week, and she used to love watching all the shows. And she was absolutely disgusted when you weren't on telly. She was
Right.
like, "Where's Mike Graham? Where is he? Where is he?" And then when you started back on, yeah, she was really really pleased about that. Yeah,
That's
she
great.
does. She
How old
really
is
does.
she?
I've started her young. She's 10. She just turned 10.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Well, listen, you're obviously a great mum. You're obviously a great daughter. We wish you all the best and thank you for taking the time to talk to us and tell us the story. And hopefully, the next time we speak, we'll have had some kind of movement and something will have happened and your mum can at least be
Yes.
looked after properly,
Yeah, I just need to find a legal team now
Okay.
to
Well,
help me
we
through
might be
the
able to
next
help you
bit.
with that as
Oh,
well. You know, we might be
really?
able to help you with that. Yeah, because we know plenty of lawyers.
Oh,
So maybe we can find somebody that will do it for you for free. That would be ideal, you
well,
know.
it would be. I mean, oh, thank
All
you,
right.
Mike. I'm
Well,
hopefully,
listen,
fingers
leave it
crossed,
with
fingers
us.
crossed.
Fingers crossed, and we'll see if we can do that. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Rachel,
Thanks.
good to see you. Thank you so much. And stay
You too.
strong.
Thank you.
Great to see you. And still smiling.
and you.
Amazing. Rachel, thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you, Mike.
Rachel Ellis there. What a story, you know? And you get the sense that there's going to be a lot of people watching this knowing that that's exactly their story and that they've had the same struggles and they've had the same problems with a system which just isn't fit for purpose. And as she says, her mother, Anne Ellis, and her dad worked all their lives. They don't deserve to be treated like this, without dignity, without care, without any kind of view as to how they feel. Her mother said she felt like she'd be better off dead. That's the NHS. And that's the message I'm sending to Wes Streeting, to Keir Starmer, and to anybody else in this government who thinks that things are going to be turned in a corner and that everything's going to get better. Well, it ain't. Certainly not in Oldham. That has been today's after show. We'll be back with more, same time on Monday.